In a small town called Ibanda in Uganda, Ayo was in the kitchen, working hard to prepare a special dinner. Her husband's relatives were visiting, and she wanted everything to be perfect. The smell of delicious food filled the air: spicy stew, soft rice, roasted plantains. Ayo wiped sweat from her forehead as she set the table, arranging each plate with care. She hoped this meal would make her husband proud, and maybe even help his family like her more. But behind her smile, she was nervous. Tund, her husband, had been acting strange all day. His voice was sharp, his eyes cold. Still, Ayo tried to stay calm. She believed if she just did everything right, maybe the evening would go smoothly. But deep inside, something didn't feel right. As the family sat down to eat, the tension in the room grew thicker. One small comment about the salt in the food was all it took. Tund's face twisted with anger. Ayo's heart sank. She knew that no matter how hard she tried, tonight would not end with smiles. What was supposed to be a joyful dinner was about to become a nightmare she would never forget. The moment was small, just a simple comment. Tund tasted the food, frowned, and said it was too salty. Ayo gently explained that she had followed his mother's recipe, hoping to ease the tension. But Tund didn't want to listen. His face darkened. In front of everyone, his mother, his sisters, his cousins, he slammed his hand on the table. The room went silent. Before Ayo could even understand what was happening, Tund stood up, grabbed her by the arm, then by her hair. She cried out, but he didn't stop. He dragged her out of the house, through the doorway, and into the courtyard like she was nothing. Her feet scraped against the ground, her head burning from his grip. Her scarf fell off. Her dress tore. But no one moved. His mother watched from her chair. His sisters just stared, their faces calm, their eyes cold. No one said a word. No one told him to stop. The neighbors heard the noise, but no one came out. Ayo lay there in the dirt, shocked and humiliated. Her heart pounded, not just from the pain, but from the shame. She had cooked for hours, hoping to be accepted. Instead, she was treated like trash, thrown out in front of the very people she had tried to impress. She looked up, hoping for a hand to help her. But all she saw were eyes looking down at her with disgust, or worse, boredom. The same people who had eaten her food now watched her suffer without saying a word. And then came the sound that broke her heart even more: laughter. Someone inside the house laughed. Plates clinked. Dinner continued. Life moved on. But Ayo didn't move. She lay still, her body bruised, but her spirit beginning to wake up. In that moment, something inside her started to shift. The pain was real, but so was the fire building in her chest. She had been thrown out like a dog, but she knew deep down, this wasn't going to be the end of her story. Ayo lay on the hard ground, her body shaking, her breath coming in short, painful gasps. Her arm was scratched, her knees bruised, and her scalp burned where Tund had pulled her by the hair. But more than the physical pain, it was the silence that crushed her the most. She could still hear the voices inside the house, calm, relaxed, even cheerful. Plates clinking, spoons scraping, a laugh here and there. The same people who had watched her being dragged and thrown outside were now eating dinner like nothing had happened. No one ran after her. No one called her name. No one asked if she was okay. She lifted her head slowly, hoping to see someone at the door. Maybe his mother, maybe one of the sisters. Maybe just one person who cared. But the doorway was empty. The curtains didn't move. No footsteps came. The door stayed shut, as if her pain didn't exist. Ayo hugged her knees, dirt covering her dress, her hands trembling. Her eyes stung with tears, but she refused to cry. Not now. Not for them. She had done everything to earn their love. Cooked, cleaned, smiled even when she was tired. But now it was clear. They didn't care. Not even a little. What broke her heart even more was the sound of laughter. A loud, deep laugh from the dining room. Someone made a joke. Someone else laughed back. They were having a good time, while she lay outside like garbage. That laughter cut through her like a knife. It told her everything she needed to know. She was alone. Truly alone. And yet, in that lonely moment, something inside her shifted. She sat up straighter, even though it hurt. Her fingers curled into fists. Her chest rose and fell, slowly, deeply. She wasn't going to beg for their love anymore. She wasn't going to wait for someone to come help her. That night, lying bruised and broken in a dusty courtyard. Ao made a quiet decision. If no one was going to save her, she would save herself. And that thought gave her just enough strength to stand up again. That night, while the house grew quiet and everyone slept peacefully inside, Ao sat in the corner of the courtyard, wide awake. Her body still hurt, but her heart felt even heavier. She looked up at the stars, her eyes dry now. No more tears. Just silence, and a decision forming deep inside her. She had given this family everything. Her time, her love, her energy. And what did she get in return? Pain. Shame. Silence. She knew it now. Nothing would change here. Nothing would ever get better. So she stood up slowly, careful not to make a sound. Every step she took felt like a goodbye. She quietly entered the small bedroom she once shared with Tund. He was fast asleep, snoring softly, unaware that the woman he had dragged across the courtyard just hours before was about to leave him. Forever. Ao didn't pack clothes. She didn't take jewelry or money. She only took 3 things: her ID card, her phone, and her dignity. She wrapped her phone in a cloth, slid her ID into her pocket, and looked around the room one last time. This place, once her home, now felt like a prison. She had no idea where she would go or what she would do. But she knew one thing: she couldn't stay. Ao opened the front door slowly, careful not to wake anyone. The night air was cool against her skin. Her steps were light, but her heart was heavy. Still, with each step away from the house, she felt something lift. Pain still lived in her bones, but hope started whispering inside her. She didn't have a suitcase or a plan, but she had courage. And that was enough for now. As she walked down the quiet road, the moon above her, the village behind her, Ao didn't cry. She didn't look back. She wasn't running. She was walking with calm, quiet strength. The kind that comes when a woman chooses herself, after everyone else chose to ignore her. She left with nothing but her name, her phone, and the one thing they couldn't take from her, her self-respect. Ao didn't know where she was going, but she kept walking. Her feet were tired, her body still sore, but her heart pushed her forward. She traveled for hours, sometimes getting a ride from kind strangers, other times walking long dusty roads. Days passed. She crossed into Sierra Leone, and somehow ended up in a small town called Makini. It was quiet, peaceful, and full of trees and smiling faces. But Ao had no money, no home, and nowhere to sleep. One evening, as the sun was going down, she sat under a tree near a small market, hungry and tired. That's when an older woman noticed her, a woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. Her name was Mama Deka. Mama Deka walked over, carrying a basket of fruits. She didn't ask too many questions. She just looked at Ao and said, "You look tired, my child. Come have some tea." Ao followed her to a small, clean house with flowers by the door. Inside, the smell of herbs and warm bread filled the air. For the first time in days, Ao felt safe. That night, Mama Deka gave her food, a soft mat to sleep on, and a gentle voice that said, "You're not alone anymore." The next morning, Mama Deka asked Ao what she could do with her hands. Ao shyly mentioned that she knew how to sew a little, especially headwraps. Her ex-husband used to laugh at her designs, but Mama Deka didn't laugh. She said, "Then we will sew, and we will sell." She gave Ao fabric, needles, and space in the corner of her shop. Little by little, Ao started sewing again. Her fingers moved slowly at first, but each stitch felt like healing. Mama Deka didn't just give her a roof. She gave her work, peace, and something even more precious, belief. She told Ao stories, gave her advice, and reminded her that women can rise from anything. With each passing day, Ao's spirit grew stronger. In a new land, with nothing but kindness and simple tea, Ao began to rebuild her life. One thread, one smile, one lesson at a time. Ao sat by the window every morning, with soft sunlight falling on her hands as she worked with bright fabrics. She began sewing slowly, carefully, remembering how her ex-husband used to laugh at her tiny designs. "Who will wear this nonsense?" he once said, shaking his head. But Mama Deka was different. She looked at Ao's work and smiled with pride. "These are not just headwraps," she said. "These are crowns." Those words stayed in Ao's heart. With Mama Deka's encouragement, she began making custom headwraps, each one with a story, each one filled with her quiet strength. At first, she sold them in the village. Women loved them. They said the wraps made them feel bold, beautiful, like queens. Mama Decca's niece helped Ao take pictures and post them online. Ao didn't expect much, but to her surprise, people began to notice. The colors, the designs, the woman behind the sewing. Everything started to spread. Her photos were shared again and again. Orders came in from Freetown, Accra, Lagos, Nairobi. Then Europe. Her small corner in the house turned into a workshop. She hired 2 young girls to help her. Her phone didn't stop buzzing. Ao named her brand Queen Wraps. She started printing little tags that said, "Wear your power." The same hands that once served tea and were pulled by force now created something that made women feel strong. Her business grew fast, not just because of the beauty of her work, but because of her story. People wanted to wear something made by a woman who refused to stay broken. Ao stayed humble. She still made tea with Mama Decca every morning. She still smiled quietly when someone called her Madam Ao. She remembered the days she was laughed at, dragged, ignored. And now, those same hands were sewing her future, one thread at a time. From silence and shame, Ao had built an empire of fabric, courage, and love. What once was a secret skill had become her loudest success. 2 years had passed. The sun in Makini had dried her tears. The needle and thread had stitched her pain into purpose. And now, Ao was returning to the very place where her spirit had once been crushed. But she was no longer the same woman. She was no longer the wife who had been dragged in front of her in-laws. She was now Madame Ao, the CEO of a fashion brand that was making waves across Africa and Europe. Her headwraps were now worn on runways, in magazines, and in boardrooms. And today she was going back to Abanda, not with shame, but with power. The dusty road into the village was quiet at first. But then came the sound, the hum of 3 black SUVs rolling in slowly. Children ran to the roadside. Adults peeked through windows. No one could believe it. The doors opened, and there she was. Dressed in her own design, a bright royal blue wrap with golden trim, heels clicking gently on the ground. She stepped out with calm confidence, followed by her team of assistants. No one spoke at first. People just stared. Some gasped. Some whispered. A few even smiled in disbelief. Ao walked slowly, her chin high, her heart steady. This was not revenge. This was transformation. The girl they had once ignored had become a woman the world couldn't stop watching. Tun's family watched from the porch, wide-eyed, frozen. His mother stepped forward with a fake smile. "You look good, Ao," she said. But Ao didn't respond with a hug or a thank you. She simply smiled and nodded, her silence speaking louder than any words. The whole village gathered as if something royal was happening. And maybe it was. Because this wasn't just a return. This was a rebirth. Ao had left with nothing but a phone, an ID, and her dignity. Now she was back with everything they said she'd never have. The cars, the business, the respect. And most of all, her peace. She had returned to Abanda not to prove anything, but to show that no woman should ever be counted out. The news spread like wildfire through the village. Ao, the same woman who had once been dragged into the courtyard in shame, was now hosting a fashion launch right in Abanda. People couldn't believe it. Ao, the quiet girl? The same woman who walked away with nothing but her phone and ID? Now she had returned not just with success, but with style, respect, and power. The event was set in the village square, decorated with bright fabrics, flower arches, and a stage that displayed her latest headwrap collection. Music played softly in the background, and guests from different parts of the country had arrived to celebrate Queen Wraps, Ao's brand. But then, without invitation, Tun's family began to arrive. First his mother, then his sisters, all dressed in bright clothes and forced smiles. They walked in like nothing had ever happened, pretending to be proud, pretending to belong. Ao saw them from the corner of her eye. Her heart didn't race. Her hands didn't shake. She had expected this. She stood calmly, surrounded by her team and guests, her head held high. One by one, they came up to her. Fake hugs. Awkward greetings. "You look good, Ao," one of the sisters said with a wide, toothy smile. Ao smiled back politely but didn't say much. She knew what they were really here for. Not support, not love, but curiosity. They wanted to see what she had become. Maybe they thought she would fall on her knees and beg for acceptance. But not this time. Ao stood in the same village square where she was once laughed at and ignored. Now people were clapping for her, taking photos with her, calling her Madame Ao. She was no longer that woman they had all watched suffer in silence. She was now a symbol of strength, proof that you could be broken, yet still come back shining. Even as Tun's family smiled and mingled, Ao knew they had lost something they never thought they'd miss, her. And she had gained everything they never believed she could. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange as Ao stood quietly among her guests. The fashion launch was a huge success. Her headwrap designs were everywhere, cameras flashed, people cheered. But she hadn't forgotten who she used to be, or how they treated her when she had nothing. Now was the time. With calm hands, Ao reached into her bag and pulled out a white envelope. No drama. No noise. Just quiet strength. She walked toward the edge of the crowd where Tun's family stood, his mother, his sisters, all dressed up, acting like proud supporters, smiling as if they hadn't once ignored her pain. Ao didn't say much. She simply walked up to them, looked them in the eye, and handed over the envelope. Tun's sister opened it, her expression casual, until her eyes caught the bold letters. Her smile disappeared. She passed it to the others. Confusion turned into shock. The paper was real. It was the title deed of the house they lived in. The same house where Ao had once cried on the floor, bruised and broken. And now it belonged to her company. At the bottom, one line changed everything. Eviction begins in 10 days. Silence fell over them. Even the music in the background felt distant. Tun's mother stared at the paper, speechless. No one could say a word. Ao stood tall, not angry, not loud. She just looked at them and said softly, "I walked out with nothing. Now I return with everything." The crowd nearby began whispering, phones recording, people frozen in place. Ao turned and walked away slowly, each step echoing in the silence. Her head was high, her heart at peace. That envelope wasn't just about property. It was about power. About standing back up after being pushed down. About showing the world you can be broken, but still come back stronger. Ao didn't need revenge. She had something greater. Victory on her own terms. The air felt heavy with silence after Ao handed over the envelope. Everyone was watching. The crowd that had come to celebrate her fashion success was now holding their breath, their eyes wide. The same people who had once pitied her now looked at her with awe. Tun's family, shocked and speechless, still clutched the eviction letter. No one moved. No one knew what to say. Then slowly the whispers began. Someone gasped. Another covered their mouth. The story was spreading like fire. The same woman who had been dragged by her hair and left bruised in that courtyard now stood in front of them as a boss, as a queen. Ao didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her presence said it all. She stood with grace, in her flowing gown and elegant headwrap, one of her own designs. Then, with a calm smile, she looked at them and said, "This time I dragged myself out, and never looked back." The crowd erupted into claps and cheers. Some people had tears in their eyes. They weren't just celebrating her success. They were celebrating her strength. Ao had gone from being broken to becoming a symbol of hope. She didn't just survive, she soared.